Yes.
Okay, I'll call the December 15, 2021 Board of Education meeting order. Can I have roll call, please?
Mr. Bernard.
Here.
Ms. Grosek.
Here.
Mr. Hess.
Here.
Mr. Hughes.
Here.
Mr. Teresi.
Here. It is recommended that the Mayfield Board of Education convene to executive session per 4C 121.22G1 to consider the appointment of public employees. Can I have a motion to go into executive session? So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Bernard.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, everybody. We're going to get back into session. We went, just to let you know, we went into executive session earlier. We came out, there was no action taken by the board at the time, so we're going to get back into our regular scheduled program here. So welcome to our December 15th, 2021 board meeting. Right now, I'd like to call up the student of the month, Ella Garrett, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ella Garrett. Whereas Ella Garrett is a 7th grade student at Mayfield Middle School who presents herself with confidence and poise, she does not question who she is. Ella is a warrior student as incredibly genuine in her relationships with others. Ella has proven she can build strong, lasting relationships throughout the school year, and whereas Ella perseveres through challenges and helps other students in class with their assignments, she is inspiring and is a true empathetic leader within the classroom. Ella takes her role as a student very seriously, trying her best with each assignment she completes. She fully encompasses what we look for in an MMS student and portrays Mayfield's pride. Whereas Ella is a leader who also exhibits good sportsmanship. She is a competitive cheerleader, plays softball and volleyball, and is a member of Ski Club. And whereas family is important to her, she says, I goof around with my younger brother Colin, do flips in the yard, build sports in the basements, and play with my dog Lucy. We are all goofy with each other and always help and support each other. We always have each other's backs, and we love to have movie and game nights when we're free. We also love watching sports and going to fun places and going on hikes with Lucy. And whereas Ella participates in Crochet Club and works on projects with her friends throughout her free time during the day. She loves to read and is always recommending books to her classmates and even her teachers. She is also a student council representative. Ella's awards and achievements include the LifeWorks Ohio Art, Essay, and Poetry Contest in the 5th grade poetry division, softball championships 3 years in a row, a cooking competition in 4th grade, and the Most Dedicated Athlete Award on her cheer team last season. Ella's smile is truly contagious, and we love spending our days with her on our team. Now, therefore, be it resolved, on behalf of all the members of the Mayfield School community, Ella Garrett is named the Mayfield Board of Education Student of the Month for Mayfield Middle School on this day, December 15th, 2021. Congratulations, Kayla.
Thank you, Ella. Congratulations. Next, we have the middle school presentation. Mr. Steve. It's all you.
Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Barnes, community. My name is Paul Destino. I'm the principal at Mayfield Middle School, and tonight we're going to be talking about the stuff that we've been doing within our building the last couple of years, in particular with our learning spaces and how we've used our time differently to meet the needs of kids. I'd like to introduce my great team here today, some of our ILT members, Mr. John Koenig, Mr. Dan Wojciechowicz, Mr. Bob Race, Mrs. Jackie McLaughlin, Mr. Dan Shepard, Mrs. Rachel Trentinelli, Mrs. Rachel Streitman, Mrs. Amy Whitty, Mrs. Danielle Powell, Mrs. Shannon Saunders, Mrs. Tina Leonard. They are part of our instructional leadership team. They are going to be presenting tonight what we've been doing. I just have to say that I'm really proud of our staff. We gave this presentation, a longer version of it, at the middle school conference about a month and a half ago. And I got to sit back and just listen to our team present to what we've been doing within our day, within our building the last couple of years, even before COVID. And it just was great for me to sit back and just be proud of what we've done. I think you'll be very impressed tonight. Mr. Dan Shepard is going to start us off, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jackie as well.
All right, so most of this presentation is really going to be about, all access learning or personalized learning and how we handle that at Mayfield Middle School. And personalized learning can be kind of a big, overwhelming idea. And so for us at the middle school, we try and kind of simplify it. So for us, when we say personalized learning or all access learning, what we really mean is just trying to get to know our students both personally and academically by structuring our time and learning tasks so we can use the curriculum we have to meet them where they're at and move them forward. Okay, that's kind of the goal, and everything that we've been working towards kind of fits into that the past couple of years. And so I'm going to brag just a little bit here. Like Mr. Destino said, because of what we've been doing, we've presented at the Ohio Middle Level Association. We've had numerous schools the past several years come and visit us and see what we're doing and ask how that we accomplished it. So what you're going to see here today is just kind of a short presentation on how our ILT here has documented our journey towards all access learning at Mayfield Middle School. And what you'll see is we've split it into these 4 parts here. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the journey, obviously important to talk about instruction, how we use our time and space, and then how we manage this personalized learning.
Okay, so how did we reimagine time, space, and instruction at the middle school? I think it's important to first mention that we're very fortunate to work in a district with a strong culture and unwavering commitment to building capacity. With a strong culture, a vision doesn't just become one more thing to do, it becomes an embedded belief, and that's what we did. Through our professional learning communities, teachers are able to have voice and work together on a team towards a goal, a common goal. And then along with the building capacity and culture, we really look at giving ourselves grace as we try something new. So having that understanding of failing forward and looking at failure as any type of feedback. We also, in our journey, started really small. So we charged teachers to think about something that they were really good at, and then use technology and personalization to make it better. So our journey began in 2016 when there were a bunch of administrators and teachers and students charged to think about competencies they would want Mayfield graduates to possess. And that was the birth of the portrait of a Mayfield Wildcat. At the same time, we were rolling out our one-to-one initiative. There was a group of teachers that created our Blended Learning Action Research Team. They went through a book study with the book Bold School. The author of that book marries the competencies, high effective teaching strategies with technology. In 2019, Dr. Ward coined personalization in Mayfield City School District as all access learning. Our ILT went through a book study of the book What School Could Be, and the author of that book, Ted Dindersmith, visits all 50 states, and what he does is he highlights schools that are going above and beyond, thinking outside the traditional box, and giving students opportunities that are not in a traditional classroom, so just breaking those walls. That really sparked doing within our school and our ILT staff members, and it got us thinking, how could we recreate school and reimagine time, space, and instruction for our middle school students?
All right, so as this idea of all access learning developed in the district, a lot of you are probably familiar with this, but it kind of developed into these 4 bins: agency, engagement, opportunity, and outcome. So we at the middle school try and focus on these things also. You know, agency is basically the voice and choice. Does everybody, in the traditional model, everybody's kind of doing the same thing in the classroom at the same time? All right, but does it have to be that way, or can there be a variety of things going on? You know, even if you're covering the same content, do all the kids need to work on the same 20 practice problems? Probably not, so you can vary that a little bit. Engagement, you know, we all know that learning is going to happen a lot more effectively if kids are engaged, so the task that they're doing matters. You know, again, is everyone doing the same thing at the same time, or is there a chance for students to off-road a little bit here, you know, with either the pace or the product? Also, habits of mind or executive functioning skills. You know, is every kid in every class going to use that content that you're learning currently in their future life? Well, probably not, but if you're structuring the tasks right, the skills, those soft skills that they're developing, they will need. So can we develop tasks that engage students through that? Opportunity is a big one. You know, traditionally in schools you focus a lot on the kind of the special ed end of the spectrum, and then even on the gifted end of the spectrum, and they get a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different focus. But what about, you know, everybody? Everybody deserves these opportunities. That kid that's just kind of the middle of the road kid, you know, do they, in 13 years of school, do they ever get to feel that their choices and their voice matters? And, you know, with all access learning, we're hoping to give them that opportunity. And then outcomes, you know, we try to make sure we personalize feedback for kids. We give them feedback in real time, and we use that to intervene, and it's short cycle rather than that idea of tracking. Like, your group may be different from day 1 to day 2 to day 3 based on that feedback that you got in real time. So that's kind of the overview, and right now I'm going to turn it over to a variety of our teachers that are going to go through some of the other things that we're doing, or more specific details here.
So now we're going to kind of move on to instruction, and when we looked at instruction, like 3 things popped up. We wanted to make sure the content was exciting and interactive for the students. We wanted to make sure our pacing fit with where the students were at, and we wanted to give them a lot more voice and choice in the activities they were producing for us to show what they knew. And like Mr. Shepard said, we were moving away from that traditional model where we're standing up in front of the class every day, telling every student the same exact information, giving them all the same feedback, giving them the same test, expecting the same answer, and we're moving more to a model where they're working together a lot more in smaller groups. It allows us to target kids more individually, and they're getting assignments where they can really put their mark on it and share their opinions and justify those opinions with information. So when we talk about interactive content, these are just some of the examples of how we've done that. We've developed choose your own adventure stories, like, you know, a lot of us have read in the past, that center around them being characters, and rather than just passively reading, they're actively making choices as they read and learn the content. We've had escape rooms where they're, you know, solving a mystery as they're learning content, and we've also created some digital notebooks which allow the students to have access to the information at all times, which includes teacher-made videos, links to articles, and that's something they always have access to, especially with their Chromebooks that were one-to-one. With pacing, we wanted to make sure that when students weren't ready to move on, we were able to still help them, but students that were ready to move on with the content had that ability. And we've done that through self-paced units where there's teacher checks along the way. And we've been able to make that happen by making a lot of teacher-made videos, whether it's directions or content, so students that are ready to move on, there's somewhere they can go if they have questions that need to be answered and we're not available for them. And with voice and choice, we wanted to make sure that the assignments we were creating, we weren't looking for just one answer. We wanted to make sure that students were collaborating, they were thinking creatively, they were thinking critically about the information, they were communicating with one another. So we developed a lot of assignments that were more open-ended, and the students had the ability to kind of take it wherever they wanted to take it, but also to justify what they were answering with relevant information, whether it's text evidence or just information that they found in various places.
This is just a we use it, dump it slide that we have here. These are all the different sites that we've used, probably several others, but these are all the different sites that we've used to help us with personalization. Many of these sites allow for content to be specific to standards, as well as provide immediate feedback for students to monitor their own learning.
So when we went to change our instruction, we found that the types of learning experiences that we wanted to create for students, the types of things Dan was talking about, didn't really fit nicely into our existing schedule. So we began to rethink time. We found out that we actually needed more time and we needed more flexibility. And we've been very fortunate that our administration has afforded us with the freedom to restructure our day and our schedule however best suits our instructional needs. So at Mayfield Middle School, there's 9 teams. Any day you might see 9 different schedules in operation. It also means that the schedule that my team used today is different from the one that we're actually using tomorrow, which sounds kind of crazy and chaotic, but we're using time more purposefully and more meaningfully than we did before. So why restructure the time at all? So like I said, we found that we needed more time. We wanted students to be able to begin a task, be that an essay, a 3D construction, a lab, a debate, and not lose momentum every time that a class period was ending. We found, even though we were skeptical that middle schoolers could in fact sit in a room for that long, we found that by minimizing those interruptions, it actually maximized their focus. We also knew that for personalization to be successful, that we needed a lot of time allocated for student-led instruction and less time for student-led learning and less time for teacher-led instruction. And we knew that we would need to be checking in with students frequently, conferencing, small group instruction, and intervention. And for that to happen, students had to be working independently. They needed some flexibility with what they could do as well for this to work. So in order to do that, we kind of broke away from a traditional schedule like what you would see on the right, what you and I were used to, going through each of your classes every day, 50 minutes, 60 minutes perhaps. And instead, thinking of it like what you see on the right, just thinking of it as just time, that we have 5.5 hours with these students. And is there a way that we could use it differently or use it better where maybe it's not so compartmentalized? And by rethinking time in that way, would that remove all the obstacles for some of these things over here, like project-based learning and cross-curricular collaboration, guest speakers, and labs? So we started to rethink of time in this way, and one small change that has had a big difference was moving to a block schedule where students are in their classes for 90 minutes or possibly 2 hours. And we found that by limiting those interruptions, that did give students more time to dive deeply into a task and to do some more creative things in our classrooms. We're also using these larger chunks of time where students aren't in a specific class at all. They're just working on a specific project or possibly an essay. So my team, imagine that we're using this afternoon chunk of time for students to write an essay that would have typically taken me an entire 5-day week in my class, doing it very teacher-led. But with all the content digitized and students able to move at their own pace, we can knock it out in an afternoon or 2. And that's possible because every teacher on my team, math teacher, science teacher, social studies teacher, are all helping with an essay. And that frees me up so that I can conference with students and meet with them individually. In a single afternoon of essay writing on my team, I can meet with my entire team of 100 students and conference with each of them individually. In 2 days, I can meet with all of them 2 or 3 times, and I would have never been able to do that in a different model. Another thing teams are doing that's been really powerful is grouping students differently, like based on ability. So again, imagine an entire morning focused on math intervention, and the science teacher, the social studies teacher, the language arts teacher are all putting on their math hats, and they're all moving students forward based on data, based on progress monitoring, and working with them on certain skills. We've also used time differently just for convenience, giving all students their test in the morning when they're fresh, and then having the rest of the afternoon free for instruction.
And sometimes there is no task at all. It's just flexible time. Students are given choice about how to spend their time. They're prioritizing their time based on their own needs. They are setting goals and sticking to them. So a student who is really great at math but struggles as a reader, when you give them some flexible time, they can zip through their math in 20 minutes and now have more time to allocate it where they need it most. And that's been really empowering for students. So in short, we're kind of thinking outside the box and using time differently to make it work for us and make it work for students, and by doing so, sort of making personalization more accessible.
So as we've experimented with time, we've realized that we need some different spaces. And we've been very fortunate to have those spaces reworked in our building. The spaces that we're utilizing allow us to group students differently. They allow us to have multiple adults in one area with all 100 students on a team. They allow for cross-curricular activities, and they also free up that one teacher, like Shannon was talking about, to tutor or provide conferences or interventions with students. And it really creates that family shared experience with our teams. So a couple of areas that we've already repurposed are our courtyard. Not only do students get to eat lunch out there, but we can have instruction out there, or students are able to collaborate outside as well. The greenhouse has been utilized now by our 8th grade science program, as well as our Bridge to Success. Many of you have already seen our secondary gym, which was transformed to an amazing learning space that has just about everything that you can need. A large area for whole group instruction, presentations, small conference room areas, large booths where students can collaborate in small groups. It's truly an amazing space that students absolutely love going to. One of the most wasted areas in schools are our hallways and our cafeterias. We're now utilizing both of those. We've created these little mini booths in the hallways. It's a great space for students to work with partners, work individually. I've also started to utilize it where it's a private area for me to conference with students, so there's a little bit less distraction around us. Cafeterias, as Shannon mentioned, testing students in the morning, which we know is beneficial to them. Cafeterias are a perfect place to do that, and it's also a great place for students to have large areas to do projects or PBLs in the cafeterias. One of the other areas that we've reworked is our library. We now refer to it as the think tank. There were a lot of outdated books that were not being checked out, so those old encyclopedias that are pretty useless, we've eliminated a lot of those and have a beautiful section of our fiction books and have now a very large space where students can once again work. We've been able to bring our whole team in there and have activities, so it's just another place that we can utilize.
So with our beautiful new spaces and our flexible schedule, we were really forced to think about what our classrooms and these learning spaces will look like and how we want to structure them so that learning is most effective for our students. You know, in a traditional classroom, you have 30 students maybe working on the same thing for about 50 minutes, generally moving at the same pace. And it feels like maybe managing questions or student progress is easier, though that's not always true. But we had to ask ourselves, what if we have 100 students in one space together, all working on possibly different things for up to 120 minutes of time? How are we going to manage that so that it isn't chaos? And first, we learned that in an all-access model, our students need to be aware of what they are doing, what they can be working on. And a lot of people think that middle schoolers can't handle freedom, and they absolutely can. That's what we've learned. They just need a little bit of help with the organizational side of things. So on our teams, we've created documents like the Week at a Glance that is on the far side of the screen there. We call it the WAG. And this is a big picture of what's happening in all classes across an entire week, Monday to Friday. So the team sits down and we talk about what are we studying, what assignments or assessments are coming up, what are some opportunities for enrichment. And we share this with students and with parents so that everybody is always aware of what they could be working on and what they need to look forward to. This is especially helpful when we have our flex days or our flex periods, that we can direct students to this. We've also had to reevaluate how we use our large physical spaces or even our classrooms. When my entire team is working together in the upper learning space, we designate teacher conference rooms where, as some of the other ILT members have mentioned, we use data to drive the groups of students that we poll and we work with. So maybe opportunities for enrichment, students that need reteaches, maybe it's based on a current assessment, kids that we want to work with to offer some additional support. Meanwhile, the other students are using the larger learning space, and the other teachers are kind of floating around helping everybody. And this is kind of where the magic happens, where we get to, I take off my social studies hat, and I can help any student with whatever they are working on. And maybe for elementary teachers, this isn't revolutionary, but it's not something that you see happen a lot at the middle or high school level. And our students were kind of like, what do you mean you can help me with math? You're my social studies teacher. But we said, hey, we're all on the same page. We can support you with whatever you're doing. And so that's created a lot of wonderful opportunities for meeting students where they're at. We've also learned to maximize student learning and focus by creating learning zones. Sometimes these are physical spaces, like that's the math zone, that's the writing zone. Sometimes it's based on like volume level. If you want to work in a no talking area, or you want to work in a collaborative zone, you can. Sometimes it's based on sizes of student groups, or even time, where maybe for the first 10 minutes of a flex period, students meet with their homeroom teachers. For the next 20 minutes, they're working independently. And for the last bit of time, they're working together on making up a science lab. We've also started to use peer tutors. So whenever students are all in different places, questions pop up, and that teacher-student conference time can get interrupted. So this is sort of the first line of defense, and is a great way for students to feel empowered to help one another. Additionally, when students have these larger chunks of time to direct their own learning, student reflection is really important. It's one of those soft skills that we need to build among our students. So we've had students complete these reflections or goal setting forms across all grade levels. So before they enter into that work period, they think about, what do I need to accomplish? What do I hope to accomplish with this time? And what do I need to be successful? And how much time is this going to take me? And then at the end, they reflect back. Did I actually meet my goals? What got in my way? What helped me to be successful? And we think that these skills that we are building at the middle school are going to help our students immensely when they reach the high school and even beyond when they're out into the world.
Another component of management and kind of like a document where students can keep a rolling digital notebook to track their progress is our student snapshots. I have to give a shout out to Teresa Dutton. We took the student snapshot and then took it a step further and are now using an academic page of it. It's a digital notebook that students keep, track their results for a lot of the higher stake tests that they're taking, the STAR test, so they can set goals, monitor their own progress. We also use it for writing and math assignments as well. I have students that link their writing assignments, their big writing assignments, so they can revisit them. But it's a great tool. I notice that even when I'm conferencing with students, it's a perfect tool to allow for that relationship to build. I'm looking at the student snapshot and seeing some great information about our students, their likes, their interests, so I can kind of have a personal conversation before we dive into that academic component. So it's a great tool too to use to build relationships.
So this all sounds beautiful and fine and dandy, but how do we know this is working? What evidence do we have to show that this is working or not? So if you've ever met middle school students, a middle schooler, you know that they think that they know everything, and they're very eager to share with you what they like and don't like. So one of the first kind of gauges that we used is middle school students were walking into class and requesting all access days from their teacher. When that happens, that is when you know you hit a home run. Another thing is that teachers were reporting they were able to provide more in-depth learning and were able to get through more content and receive more quality work as well. And then our most recent data, we have a group of 7th graders who were targeted for math intervention, our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. They just retook the STAR math score, and 76% of those students increased their score, which is huge. So you can read the rest of them up there. And I'm going to turn this over to Dan.
All right, so with all that you hear, and you know, like we said, we have 9 teams kind of that are given some freedom to do, you know, all the things within the sandbox here that we've set. You know, the last question is kind of from a building level, how do you kind of manage that and make sure kind of all the oars are rowing in the same direction? And so at MMS, we have, you know, building goals, objectives, and action steps. And this, like, you know, honestly, this summer, Dr. Barnes put out his 100-day plan, and I know it sounds like I'm sucking up here because, you know, he's the new boss, but when I read that, it really, like, you know, logically made sense to me as well. Here's how we can organize things. So I put together a similar document that has, you know, our building goal, which is to continue with all access learning, and then 3 objectives that we have at the building. And so this year, we've really stayed hyper-focused to those 3 things. And if you read them, you can see, you know, our one objective is to continue to innovate and be creative with time and learning. Our second one is to improve progress monitoring. And then we have the third one, which is talking about executive functioning skills and, you know, how to be successful in this all-access learning environment. And what this allows us to do is when we meet with all the teams and when the teams meet with each other, the conversations we said should be centered around this. What are you doing with your time and learning? What are you doing to progress monitor kids? And as long as the conversations and what you're talking about focus on those things, then you're moving in the right direction. So we found this a really helpful way to kind of help manage all of these things that are going on, because as you can see, it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but we're really happy to be doing it, and we really think we're doing what's good for kids.
So that concludes our presentation, but just a plug for our ILT members and our staff and just the board and Dr. Barnes supporting our building. We started this conversation before COVID, and it would have been very simple 18 months ago to shut this all down and say, hey, we're going to go back to a traditional schedule, we're going to go back to traditional education just because we have to with COVID. And we slid back a little bit last year when we started back in September, but by October or so, we just picked up where we left off, and COVID did not stop what we wanted to do within our building. I have the opportunity to walk around all day long, especially during lunch with the kids. Our kids are happy. You know, I don't get complaints from parents. Kids don't come to our office complaining about staff. We have some issues with the kids at times, I get that, but I just get the sense that kids really love what we're doing. It's because of what the staff here is doing and the staff who are at home and during the day in our building that are doing each and every day with our kids. They're just spectacular, and as a building principal, I'm really proud of my team. So thank you so much to my team, and thank you to the Board of Education for supporting Mayfield Middle School.
Thank you, Mr. Destino and ILT team. That was a great presentation. You did answer my one question I had. I wanted to know how you judged the success of the program, and I saw that on that one of those final screens, so I appreciate that. I think anytime that we can get kids as early as possible to get organized, set goals, work with other groups of kids, is going to set them up for life. Middle school to high school, so when they get into college and into the work environment. So the work you're doing there, you guys are knocking it out of the park. The rest of your staff, please let them know we appreciate everything you're doing, everything you've done, especially these past 2 years. It's been difficult. We understand, and we thank you for everything that you've done. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments.
Yeah, I ditto what President Ferraros just said. Also, just like to commend you on your continued commitment to kids, putting them at the center of your work. One of the things that Mr. Shepard mentioned was being hyper-focused. And I really think that your ability to pinpoint those things that are very important to you all, that you want to maintain as your bullseye, is helping you stay hyper-focused. And I think that's lending to your effectiveness and your success. So kudos to you all. Thanks for coming out tonight. The presentation was awesome. And it's so heartwarming to know that our kids are in good hands with all of our leaders, and certainly of the school staff. So thank you.
So at this time, thank you again for your presentation. I don't know if all of you know, this is Mr. Hughes' final board meeting after 24 years of being on the board. The board and administration would like to recognize Mr. Hughes for all his time, not only as a board member for the past 24 years, but also as a police officer down in New Orleans. He started down there and came up to Gates Mills as police chief. I believe it's been 60 years of public service around there, George. About 60 years of public service. 65. It was off by 5. 65 years of public service. So we wanted to recognize George, Mr. Hughes. I'm going to just read this award here we have for him. It's from the Mayfield City Schools. With our greatest appreciation, we hereby present George Hughes with this award in recognition of your 24 years of service as a member of the Mayfield Board of Education from 1998 to 2021. We thank you for your commitment and dedicated service to the students, teachers, staff, community of the Mayfield City School District, December 15, 2021. So thank you, George. I'll pick this on over to you. It's pretty heavy. It's a nice paperweight. Recognize George's legacy here, and I think, Mr. Snyder, we wanted to set up a scholarship in Mr. Hughes' name for seniors that will be going into public service, teacher, police, fire, whatever, in Mr. Hughes' name. So, Mr. Snyder.
A little shorter than Ron. So the Board of Education came together, administrative team as well, discussed how best to honor you, Mr. Hughes, your commitment to student growth, your story as a student, how you've been a lifelong learner. He's the most technically savvy person I've ever met. He's truly an inspiration, certainly has been to me, has been a mentor. So in the short time in which we got this thing launched, we are pleased to provide, or in your name, there's $2,000 in the scholarship fund here in the district. We will be asking you to participate in the awarding of 2 $500 scholarships this spring to deserving students who continue in the area, I believe, of law enforcement or public safety and or something to do with public education. And of course, we want to continue to grow this. Now, please don't try to take this to your local bank and cash it. But we are very, very pleased to honor you in this way, and certainly all the kids that you've had been an inspiration to, that you've also been a part of their lives. So we'd like to present this to you tonight as well. So thank you so much.
Chief, I'd like to offer a few personal comments, brief. I'd just like to personally thank you for being a fine example for me. Back when I was a young runny-nosed teacher here, 94, 95, you've always been a mainstay and a presence. I've learned a lot from you about public service. I've learned a lot from you about being a man. And I think more importantly about my role as a father and trying to do the right things by my family. So personally, that's what I would like to offer up to you as a sincere thank you for what you've meant to me. So thank you.
George, I've known you since I moved to the district, and you became a quick and fast friend that I feel our hearts have been connected for a very long time now. You are a person that is not only inspiring, but somebody who can always be dependent upon. As I went through my journey, first in putting together levy campaigns, you served as my vice president, and then on the board several times you served as my vice president, so I always said you were my favorite vice. And you still are. Being a person who is totally dependable, I knew that I could count on you anytime, day or night, and with a husband that traveled the majority of the time, it was very helpful. And George, I believe you came over to my house twice in the middle of the night to help spot my kids because I had nobody else. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You'll always be with me. You're the best.
Luckily, I first met you at a board meeting and not you giving me a ticket. I always thought I had a calm demeanor about me, and I guess I do, but you brought me to another level as far as showing compassion and thinking through problems, projects, et cetera, and just helping me develop into being a better person. Very blessed to have met you and worked with you all these years. I guess I don't want to start tearing up, so I'm going to stop. Thank you.
George, what can I say? We've known each other 40 years. And I was fascinated with the man you were when I met you. And today, after working with you, I'm even more impressed. It has been a privilege and honor to work side by side with you, to have you on the board as a strong advocate for our team, our kids, and our entire school. You have been an incredible leader, and for that, we will always be grateful. The last couple of years have been tough on you personally and tough on the board. But you never wavered. You never lost your positive attitude or passion for your board position. You have always listened, encouraged, and reasoned without judgment. And for that, I know we are all thankful. So tonight, we want to thank you for your supporting our team and made the board and its success what it is. George, you will be missed as our mentor and our friend. We wish you good health and happiness in your retirement. Your life's accomplishments have given you permission to relax and enjoy. Thank you. Thank you.
First, I want to thank God for allowing me to be on this earth for 87 years. And and to give me many, many opportunities to do the things that I have done. I want to thank my parents and grandparents for modeling what it is to be a good neighbor, to be a good community member, and to do things for other people. As we said earlier, at the end of this year, I will complete 65 years of public service. 41 of those as a law enforcement officer, and the last 24 as a school board member. For those 65 years, 49 of them at the end of this year will be involved with the Mayfield schools. I moved here in 1973, came up from the South to become the police chief in Gates Mills. Then there at that time, the late John Marston, my first week on the job, said, I want you to go up and meet Dr. Scaville and get involved in the school. And I was pleased with that. And it also told me that if I spent some of my work time on school business, it wasn't going to get me in trouble. My daughter was just entering middle school at that time. My son was 2 years away from starting school. I came and met Dr. Scaville, and he said to go into the schools, talk to the principals, see if there was anything that I could be doing to help them. I did that, and it all worked out, to my knowledge, very well. From there, I also became involved as a parent with the parent-teacher groups and all the other things that parents do, volunteering in the school and so forth. That followed on through the time of my children being in school, along with my involvement as a police officer. And then when my kids were all out of school, I still continued to volunteer in the school district. I volunteered in levy committees, any other committee that I could find that was needed someone on the committee, I volunteered for it. People used to say to me, where do you find the time to do all of this? And I started out by saying, because I have no life. And then someone said to me one day, you know, that's rather demeaning. As I said it as a joke, they said it's rather demeaning. So I changed it to, this is my life. And that's exactly what it's been. During the levy committees, I met Sue Grosick, and we worked together for 4 years or more passing levies. People even failed one, but we passed the next time. And I have to say that upon retirement, I decided to run for the school board. I thought it was a natural transition, and I was blessed to be elected. Beyond that, the community saw fit to re-elect me 5 times. For that, I'm truly blessed and appreciate the support that this community has given me. Mayfield is a family, and the Mayfield family has certainly welcomed me and brought me in. I have to say that I was very fortunate to work with 12 different board members over my 24 years. I have to say, first of all, that Sue Grosick and Al Hess have been the longest. They are completing their 22nd year. And when they finish their term, in 2 years, they will equal me with 24 years of service. I've also felt very good working with Ron and Jimmy, because we've worked together for the last 8 years. And a lot of these years have been very difficult. They've done an excellent job, and I was very pleased to see that they got reelected in this last election, along with Jolene Reed, who's in the audience, and I know that she will do an excellent job on the board taking my place. I want to say this, that these have been difficult times, and it's not just because of COVID. Unfortunately, in this country right now, there is a distinct conflict between opinions. And there's nothing wrong with having differing opinions. There's nothing wrong with voicing your opinion. But I think we've gone too far. And it's not in the best interest of any of us. We've seen it here in this very room. It's fine to stand up and voice your opinion and to be different. But when you start attacking people because of their difference of opinion, all it does is cause alienation. So I'm hopeful that come 2022, that will gradually get behind us, and we will all be able to work together, doing the right thing, and recognize that we will always have differences of opinion. But it's not offensive. We're all working for the same goal, especially on the school board, to do what's best for the kids. This board, in the coming years, will have difficulties, hopefully not beyond what we've already gone through, but I know they're up to the task. And I just pray that the community will support them, and that the differences of opinion will not come to tear us apart. So I wish all the best to Mayfield in 2022. Thank you all for your time and listening to me. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity that I've had. It's been very rewarding to me, and I will continue to support the Mayfield schools in any way that I possibly can. Thank you very much, and have great holidays.
Before we get into our agendas here, if we could take 5 minutes, if anybody wants to stop up and wish Mr. Hughes well, you can, and we'll get back on with business. Thank you. All right, we're going to call the meeting back to order. The next item is our community communications. We did not have anybody contact the board office to talk tonight, and nobody showed up to talk tonight, so we'll move on to our president's announcements. President's announcements tonight, just real quick, everybody have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and a happy and healthy 2022. Hoping for the best for 2022. I think good things will be happening. One other thing, though, because you just didn't know, I don't know what happened with, do we know what happened with the 8th grade basketball team? Did they win their conference? They're in a tournament. Both 7th and 8th grade teams had a great season. I think they only lost 2 games each, and the 7th grade team looks really good. So excited for them, and the swim team's looking good. Mrs. Evans is here. I want to thank I saw you posted something about the Mayfield High School Police and Fire Department and Walmart and Chick-fil-A. I'd like to thank them for everything they did for the kids. That was today. That was awesome for the kids. I saw the pictures. They were all very happy eating their Chick-fil-A and shopping with the police and fire. So that's a great thing. And Thank you to Millbridge for hosting us today at their graduation. We had a great time seeing all the students. Happy, what, about 120? We got six fifth grade classes, right? 134. 134. Big class. Great to see that their graduation. We always look forward to that in the elementary school. It's a great program. We thank the Highland Heights Police and Highland Heights for supporting that for us. So that's all I had. Have a great Christmas and New Year. We'll move on to the superintendent's announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will be brief. Echo much of what you said and wish everyone a healthy, happy holiday season. And hopefully see you in the buildings next year. Thanks.
I'm going to go back to the presents because I jumped the gun. So at this time, we have to appoint a president pro tempore for our organizational meeting. I'd like to nominate Mr. Hess. Have a second?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Pinaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
You can say yes, if you like yourself.
Mr. Hughes.
Okay. The next item on the president's announcements that I skipped was the change in the date for our organizational meeting. That date has changed from January 12th to now January 4th, 2022 at the board office, and that'll be a 5:30 meeting. Just to give you an update on that. Next, number 8, board member committee reports. Any committee reports tonight? We are, as I mentioned last month, we are reorganizing the committees to fall under our 4 pillars of our district, and we might have more information at our next meeting to talk about how that's going to work so that everybody understands that. Our next item is our superintendent consent agenda, items A through K. Can I have a motion for approval?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Pinaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes. Item 10, other superintendent's business, Mayfield High School baseball and softball team trip to Myrtle Beach. That takes the president of the school board with them. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Pinaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
That was a joke for anybody that was watching. Number 11, treasurer's report. A, financial statements for November 30th, 2021. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Pinaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Next item is financial transactions. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Pinaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
The next item is donations. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Pinaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Item D, our tax advance pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 321.34. Motion for approval.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Pinaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Item F, addendum number 1. Have a motion for approval.
I think you
Addendum C.
he skipped
That's
these.
a rough one tonight. Item E, new administrative position, assistant treasurer. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bernard, before we take roll, I'd like to provide a little commentary on this position. As you will recall, in April of 2021, this past year, we implemented an exit incentive. We had 22 employees participate, 5 of which were exempt secretarial staff, which are contained within the Board of Education Cost Center. We have, part of our budgeting principles or theory, we've always taken exits, and we've always asked the question, do they need to be replaced? If they do need to be replaced, what should that look like? And we try to maintain those expenses within those cost centers. So for example, we also had 7 teachers also take the exit incentive, and we retain those dollars within the teaching cost centers throughout the district, whether it be K through 12. Again, asking the question, should we replace those teachers, or where are those basic needs? Of the 5 positions that came out of the exempt secretarial, 3 of those positions, we dedicated those resources to add paraprofessionals at center, to assist in elevating the remaining paraprofessionals in the district to full-time status. And so we reallocated those Board of Ed dollars to that priority, or to that objective, leaving us 2 vacant positions. We have internally evaluated what the need is in central office. We've had discussions about how technology is changing what I would call backroom operations. No longer is the day where I sit down and I do data entry. I'm not doing data analytics. I'm analyzing, evaluating, I'm putting together some thoughtful documents to share with executive team members, whether it be Board of Education, Superintendent, executive staff, or even building staff. Talk about trends, talk about what are we seeing in the community, the demands of additional data there. So this, we've agreed then to reduce yet another position. So therefore, of the 5, we're going to be eliminating 4 of them. However, we're going to repurpose that position and create an assistant treasurer's role, which is not only to be an assistant to me, but it's also going to serve the function of almost like an office manager for the remaining staff and support all of the other areas, whether it be director of people services, whether it be human resources. So while the title says assistant treasurer, this person is going to be doing so much more than that. It will be expenditure control. This will not cost the district any additional resources. We're reallocating, and quite frankly, I think what we're looking to do is right-size the central office function. So those folks that remain will be supported, have the office management support. Also, from my perspective, issuing 1,000 W-2s annually. We have just under 700 regularly contracted employees. We're over $100 million in all funds. The countless compliance, and to be the lone degreed business professional in the organization, I think is a little bit disconcerting for those of you sitting here, the event that something happened to me, and also for the community at large. So I share that as backdrop to say that it's not simply about me, this is about the organization, and therefore I do appreciate this recommendation coming forward.
Mr. President, if I might ask, with the exception of the Director of Human Resources, every other central office administrator has line responsibility that oftentimes takes him or her away from the day-to-day running of the management of the office. I see, as Mr. Snyder mentioned, this position being able to provide office management support, which I think would significantly enhance our effectiveness and efficiency, particularly since we have reduced staff. So the coordination in central office around the day-to-day affairs is much needed with fewer staff. And as Mr. Snyder indicated, this position isn't intended to solely be responsive to the office of the treasurer, but also the other central office administrators, as well as the support staff that's there.
Again, Mr. Snyder, I think that one of the main things that you said, that it creates redundancy, which I think you're trying to do with other positions in the administrative office. I think that's a good thing to have, especially with the district and with the treasurer role, and to have somebody else there to be able to step into the shoes in case. So I think redundancy always is a good thing to have. Thank you for forward thinking. So we need a roll call.
Mr. Tracy? Yes. Mr. Pinaro?
Yes.
Ms. Grosek?
Yes.
Mr. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Back to F. Addendum number 1, financial transaction. Have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Tracy? Yes. Mr. Pinaro?
Yes.
Ms. Grosek?
Yes.
Mr. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
The final item, addendum number 1, donations. Motion for approval.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Tracy?
Yes.
Mr. Pinaro?
Yes.
Ms. Grosek?
Yes.
Mr. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Other treasurer's business. Item A, the minutes from our regular meeting on November 18th, 2021. I have a motion for approval. Roll call.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Item B, our walk-in addendum, exit incentive program. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
And Mr. Fenaro, if I may, there's yet another example of us implementing an exit incentive. We have 10 individuals in the mass bargaining unit participating, which represents about $810,000 of payroll, or 10% of that total bargaining unit's population, eligible population. We intend to take these resources and evaluate how we might be able to redeploy them within that bargaining unit to make it more effective and efficient, whether that be in transportation or whether that be in custodial maintenance services. As we go to negotiations, we're hopeful that we can use these dollars to maybe level some folks up, maybe rethink some positions, and really maybe realign it to today's practices. Not with the intent to eliminate, but with the intent to rethink. When you free up resources, it gives you the ability to do that. And we've done that very creatively, at least in the 16 years that I've been here. So one of the things the district struggle with is turning over its employees. We've incentivized, we've not had a risk since I've been here. And it's the other thing I think is very critical in implementing these types of programs. It allows folks to make decisions and not impact themselves negatively financially as they transition to maybe another career or to another relaxing point in their lives, so to speak. So we're very excited about this, and so is Matt.
And congratulations to the 10 that have taken this, and thank you for their service, and we wish them all the best. So can we have a roll call for this, please?
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
And Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Item 13, other board business, addendum number 2, the Board of Education membership in the local, state, and national organizations. I have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Roll call.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
And Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
And final item, OSB Legal Assistance Fund Consulting Services. Motion for approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
And Mr. Hughes.
Leave this to adjournment unless there's anything else from the board. All right. Well, everybody, again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy and Healthy New Year. We will see you next year. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Take a motion first.
No motion. I did that.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Fenaro.
Yes.
Ms. Grosek.
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
And finally, Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
And finally.